Hi, I'm Jeannie Gang with Studio Gang Architects, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. Some architects, back in the early days of modernism, designed their own furniture, among them Frank Lloyd Wright, Rudolph Schindler, and Richard Neutra. Today, with a few exceptions, modernist architects stay out of the furniture biz and rely instead on talented people like today's guest, legendary furniture designer Dakota Jackson. Later on, we'll do a little slow dancing with musical guest Krisanthi Pappas. And now, the guy who used to think a charrette was a prescription gum to stop smoking, George Smart.
Thank you, Tom. Charrettes are so delicious, by the way. Just pop a few in and those smoking urges go right away. My favorite flavor is spearmint. Just kidding. A charrette is a structure for discussing proposed building design, a mix of a focus group and brainstorming to create interesting alternatives. Just another example that architecture language, like any profession, can be full of some nonsensical jargon. In the past, we've talked about fenestration, for example, which sounds like a somewhat unpleasant medical procedure, but it means the arrangement of windows and doors on a building. Not too invasive. But it would be better to call it windows and doors. As reported by architectural record editor Stephen Clement some 30 years ago, and still true today, architects are mostly oblivious to telling facts plainly to their clients, to the public, and to others who would love to learn more about what they do. It's one of the last priesthoods, and even the religious priesthoods, in whatever flavor of worship you choose, are much more verbally accessible. Catholics got out of the all-Latin services 60 years ago, but architecture still likes to speak in tongues. Stephen Clement cited an invitation he got once from Rice University. The themes included the role of contextualism versus disruption or critique, the relation between architecture and event, the notion of environmental determinism with regard to social practices, the possibility of oppositional urban space, and the emancipatory potential of architecture. What the heck does all that mean?
Yeah.
And architecture wonders why it isn't highly appreciated or understood. As Clement notes, it isn't a sign of cleverness to be misunderstood, and he called for submissions of ridiculous architecture language to the magazine. We're going to do the same. Send your most incomprehensible examples to me, George at usmodernist.org, and maybe we'll read some on the air and send you a little something. Please be sure to include your name and phone number and your mailing address. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs, and by modernist realtor Angela Roll. In a story that we are largely making up, modernist realtor Angela Roll worked her way through college, dancing like no one's watching to Mambo No. 5 and brilliantly house-flipping Neutra, sometimes simultaneously. At 22, following a celebrity-filled party at a famous hillside L.A. modernist house involving diving off the roof into the pool, absolute Le Mans, and a new use for WD-40, Angela was recruited to the architecture school, where after years of sleep-deprived design studios, she's now a modernist real estate agent with specialized training, advising buyers and sellers on everything from appropriate renovation to saving a completely doomed mid-century house from destruction. That last one is true. Reach her at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL or 919-995-0550.
Dakota Jackson grew up in Queens, New York, in a family of professional magicians. He graduated from one of the best high schools in the U.S., Forest Hills High School, whose alumni include the Ramones, Art Garfunkel, Jerry Springer, and even Captain Kangaroo. For a time, Dakota worked in the family business of stage magic, even performing the dangerous bullet catch back in 1976. But he survived, and his best trick was shifting to a wildly successful career in furniture design, now spanning 5 decades. He was also a sexy worldwide sensation in those steamy 50 Shades of Grey movies from a few years back. That movie franchise was so huge, and prior to the movies, every woman I saw at the airport or on the beach was reading one of those books.
Tom, that was Dakota Johnson in the 50 Shades of Grey movies. Daughter of Melanie Griffith and Don Johnson, and granddaughter of Tippi Hedren, not Dakota Jackson.
Oh. It's just like in high school, when I would get those Dakotas mixed up. Okay, let's try this again. Among Dakota Jackson's projects are the library chair for the San Francisco Public Library, used in libraries around the world, including Harvard, NYU, and Stanford. He's won numerous awards, including the Architecture Digest Lifetime Achievement Award, and he did still do that bullet trick, though, right?
Right.
He's been featured in countless publications and museum exhibitions. Welcome, Dakota.
Hey, welcome. Myself.
Yeah, come on in.
Hey, before we get started, thanks for being a good sport with our 50 Shades bit. How many people are in the Dakota Club? It's such a cool name.
Well, the name pops up. In fact, I am in a baby book cited as the American furniture designer Dakota Jackson. So after that, the name has gone absolutely wild. And as far as Dakota Johnson goes, I mistake myself for her at times.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Now, we're big fans of the martini here at U.S. Modernist, Dakota. Tell us about your martini glass for Bombay Sapphire, and can we be a focus group to test it?
Yeah.
Well, it's something to look at and appreciate, and then you lift it as if you were lifting somebody by the neck, you see. And
as I never have done.
Which you have never done, but it's quite an experience. And so I decided to take that and create a glass that was somewhat like a pendulum. And it can get sloppy if you're not very focused. In fact, somewhere in the middle of the drink, things can tend in that direction. But the glass is designed to flare out asymmetrically, so that because of surface tension, the gin or vodka, whatever you prefer, it just comes to the edge and seems as if it's going to sort of drip down, but it doesn't because of surface tension. So I was playing with all of these tenuous elements. This piece, the stem which comes up into the neck, flares out on an asymmetrical level, and then the liquid is just holding that edge. So you have this moment, this awkward moment before you actually lift it to your lips. And it's not only a delight, but it's a test on your ability to keep the glass stable.
So this is not a drink you want to try for your third martini, just your first.
That's right. And usually we drink our first to get to our second.
Right. Now, I know these glasses were in lots and lots of ads. Did they actually manufacture them?
No, they didn't. There's 4. I have 2. They have 2. And there will be a glass coming out that is somewhat based on that, and we can look for that in 2023.
Oh, awesome. Well, we have to order some of those. Yeah, we could get some for our group.
At $25,000 a set, you can get as many sets as you like.
Does it include a bottle of Bombay Sapphire?
Yeah. A really big bottle, Tom.
Right, you get coupons, actually.
Okay. Now, Dakota, what kind of house do you live in to put all this great stuff that you've designed? Is it a traditional house? Is it a modern house? Is it a Cape Cod? What is it like?
I have a brownstone in New York City in Gramercy Park. Oh. And so I've got 5 stories of furniture, which were all the prototypes. So it, at first glance, it looks really wonderful. But then you begin to discover that hardly anything works in the house.
That's not your fault.
Well, thankfully, it's not like that in my business, but just in my home. It's a question of how life runs anyway. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But my wife is in the art world, so we have quite a collection of art. And I collect musical instruments, everything from Eastern to Chinese instruments, Indian instruments, Yugoslavian instruments. I even have a sousaphone because we have a marching band in the house. My 7-year-old my 7-year-old grandson, plays the sousaphone. I've got pianos, I've got guitars. In fact, the piano was one that I designed for Steinway in 2000, called the Tricentennial. And then there's all that furniture. There's a representation of the 50 years of pieces that I've done.
It's a good thing you got 5 stories there.
Yeah, you need room for all that stuff.
Yeah.
You do.
Dakota, you got interviewed early on by one of the world's top design icons, Andy Warhol. What was that like?
Well, when Andy interviews you, it's almost the other way around. He just goes, gee, and golly, or he did, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so you start asking him questions. And so it's both a delight that he's focused on you, and then it's a bit of a strange sense because of the way he'll just drop a point. But at the end of the interview, he said to me, you should paint your furniture. Paint your furniture. And I thought that was marvelous. I mean, just the fact that he kind of stepped outside of that very remote world that he seems to live in. But he's genuine in that. He's an enthusiast. And yet it comes out in this very sort of slow, laconic way. And the fact that he did give enough thought to what I was doing to suggest a future step in my work, I actually took his advice and I turned out a collection called the Wonder Series, New Wonders of the World. And it was based on Wonder Bread, actually.
Oh, right. Good old white bread. Yeah.
Right. With
good old white bread.
And the primary colors in the wrapping. Yeah.
That's right.
Wow. So you had not been painting your furniture, or that wasn't something that was a cornerstone of your technique before that?
Not really. We started combining, they were literally the Wonder Dots, but in a field of gold leaf. And so did a series of cabinets, bureaus, and mirrors in that fashion.
Sounds like fun.
It was.
Were you part of the Studio 54 scene in the 80s?
Indeed, I was, starting in about 1978, 79 when it first opened.
So
you could find me there many nights at about 2 or 3 in the morning.
So for us that missed it, and the mystique of it all, what was that like?
Well, the first time I went, I was at a party uptown. See, I lived 2 lives. One was uptown where my clients were, and then the other world was downtown in the world of dancers and painters and sculptors and poets and philosophers. So there was a real schism there between the two, but I happened to be at a party uptown with Diane von Furstenberg, who I hadn't met before, and she said she was moving into a new apartment, and I was known for designing beds. I was very famous for beds. So would I design a bed for her? And I said, yeah, you can come down to my studio and we can discuss it. She thought I meant Studio 54.
Oh, no.
So she said, my car's downstairs. What do you say we go? I thought she meant to my studio, and I was a little bit hesitant. So we drive up in front of Studio 54, and I must say that Diane had and still does have great legs, really great legs. And so the driver opens her door. Her leg comes out of the car in stiletto heels, and Andy Warhol is there, and he photographs her, and then Steve Rubell, one of the partners in Studio 54, just happened to be standing there too while everybody was screaming at this fellow named Mark to try to get in to the cordons. And so I get out of the car, and the paparazzi start photographing Diane and I. And Andy comes over, and Diane says, I want you to meet the world's greatest furniture designer. And Andy said, golly. And then Steve comes over, and she says the same thing, and we stroll into Studio 54. And after that, I was a made man. I could walk into any disco in New York after that because word traveled. And it's a scene, even though I haven't seen the films, but I can only imagine. And I don't think you can really come close to what that experience was like. between the personalities that were there, what went on in dark corners of that place,
So
the dancing, the
you
silver spoon.
You had your 15 minutes of fame and then some, it sounds like.
And then some.
Paraphrase Mr. Warhol.
Yes.
Now, I did find a little information on the bed that you mentioned about Dan. It was called the Eclipse.
That's right.
And it had a lighting system in it?
Yeah, it was based on the moon, which was the footboard, moving in front of the sun, which was the headboard, and then behind that, the aurora. And as the day dimmed, the light would come up. And at 2 in the morning, the light would automatically shut off.
Wow.
But it was like the rays of the sun forming this eclipse.
That must have been just stunning to be in it and see all that happening.
I never had the occasion.
You missed out.
I take it you don't have one of your own in your brownstone?
No, I'm a little more tame in my house.
Mm.
You also did a very famous desk for Yoko Ono.
Yes, I did. It was a desk which was a gift for John on his 34th birthday. And I'm not saying anything that is not generally known. So it was at a time when they were separated, and he was living on Fifth Avenue, and Yoko living in the Dakota, actually, on Central Park West and 72nd Street. She wanted a desk that had a number of hidden compartments that would be like a Chinese puzzle. And I never really asked what it was for, but the visits to the apartment where John and Yoko lived was absolutely extraordinary. There was a white piano in the dressing room. She wanted me to understand who John was, where all of those outfits from Magical Mystery Tour straight through the early uniforms that the Beatles wore. It was a really enchanting world to be in. And it did inspire this idea of designing a piece that was like a magic trick or a Chinese puzzle where it would open in different ways, having no idea because it was about the illusion of normalcy, that what you looked at was exactly what it was.
Did you ever do any consulting, Dakota, in TV and movies? Because I would think films like National Treasure and the Dan Brown films would be wanting some furniture with secret compartments.
No, I didn't, but I designed magic illusions for rock and roll shows. In fact, I was involved with a group that I don't know how many people would know at this point. They're called Foghat.
Oh, yeah.
And they were a great British group, but...
yeah, they were known for Slow Ride and a few other...
Yeah.
I was a DJ back in the day.
Tom knows all the hits.
Yep.
And I traveled with them. I did their staging. I worked with Donna Summers and developed a stage show for her, actually to be in the large stadiums. And there was a big number called Fairy Tale, where a book would drop down onto the stage, a fold-out book. And as each page turned, there would be a new fold-out of another scene from a fairy tale. And as each page turned, she would somehow walk through the page and have a different costume on. So, yeah, I thought of that on the spot, and then I was on the spot, and then I had to produce it.
Wow. So did you work with her directly, face-to-face?
Yes, I did, and she used to sing to me in her kitchen in one of the canyons in your part of the world, and it was like the silver ball coming down at Studio 54. I felt that it was stupendous to hear that voice and be in the same room with her.
Now, how did you draw from your early career in magic to create some of your design?
Well, my life centers around women, you know? So I met an artist one day, and you have to remember that this was the late 60s. And so the next day I moved in with her. And she was a fabulous cook. We lived in an empty loft that had to be built. Now, at this point, I was still a stage entertainer. I was making appearances from television shows to the mountains, meaning the Catskill Mountains, to nightclubs in Florida, to private events. But I was beginning to drift away from it as my hair was getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And it was before that period of time when people like Doug Henning were very popular, and magic was beginning to transition from that type of Fred Astaire look for the magician to that look of free love and all the rest. So I started building the loft, and that's when it happened. That's when there was this explosion. It was the moment when my future forked, and I was handed the ticket to the rest of my life. I found that as a magician, I was talented, but as a builder, I was extremely gifted. And so I very quickly transitioned into a builder of wonders, which was a combination of magic and design.
Now, did anyone in your family who was, from the magic world stay in it? Is there a brother or sister somewhere we should be looking up in Vegas?
No, I was the last of 3 generations to perform.
Last of the Magic Jacksons?
Yes, the Magic Jacksons.
The Magic Jackson, yeah.
Well, other than someone with a huge budget, Dakota, what's your favorite type of client? What kind of things do you like to work on the most with a person?
I've been very lucky and very charmed that when people come to me, they come because of what I do. And some of that is to present to them things that they could have never imagined. And so right from the start, I have enthusiasts. And I have a long tradition of my work behind me. So anyone who's got the courage and is willing, and I guess the funds to do it, steps forward, and they're always delightful relationships. They've learned from me, I've learned from them. But over the years, I've established a business we have perhaps thousands of clients at this point, and I don't meet them all. And I've developed collections. And so much of what's done now are through the collections. But in the early years, it was people like, once again, Diane von Furstenberg, or Jan Wenner, who started Rolling Stone, or Lorne Michaels, who
Saturday Night Live,
yeah. and on and on and on. And those professional relationships turned into personal relationships, and you can only imagine what it was like to be hanging around with these people.
It wasn't until fairly recently, though, that you started your own store in L.A.
Well, it's a Build Back Better situation, actually. I had started in L.A. in 1986. I was represented by others. And then in 1997, I opened my first showroom. And somewhere in the period ensuing 2007, 2008, I decided to take a break from L.A. because I was getting involved with other areas, and that was in the cruise ship industry, and also my relationship that was developing at a very fast pace with Steinway Piano. So it wasn't until 2019, just before COVID hit, that I opened a new showroom, and then it was closed down. I closed it and have reemerged again this fall. And so we're just getting into the swing of things again, and it's, as I said, a Build Back Better situation. It's a really beautiful space. I've got new collections in there. I'm very excited about it. I love L.A.
And where is it in L.A.?
It's in the Pacific Design Center on Melrose and San Vicente.
Okay. And one of these collections you have in there is the chess collection?
I have the chess collection, that's right.
What is that all about?
Well, it's, in a funny way, related to the martini glass. I'm fascinated with the way chess pieces have evolved over the centuries, and to this very, very simple form, and the way the shaft comes up into the neck, and that delicate point again, and how you lift these pieces. And I look to find that same delicate moment in a series of tables, occasional tables, dining tables, coffee tables, that have this, it's almost ephemeral. It's a combination of being there, having mass, but at the same time having this very elegant, slim form that's coming up and opening up like a flower to create the surfaces.
I imagine there's some of that same kind of ephemeral feeling when you're designing pianos with Steinway?
Well, it's just the opposite. You've got an instrument there that's over 300 years old. And so...
And weighs about 2 tons.
And, well, about half a ton, I would say. Yeah, I mean, it's not the kind of instrument you're going to carry around on your back, certainly. So it's a weighty instrument, and that's what makes it quite interesting, because when you think of the relationship between the musician and other instruments, the guitar, the violin, the bass fiddle. In fact, I have a long tradition with the bass fiddle for other reasons. But these are instruments, and in a way you're right about ephemeral, because these are instruments that your body wraps around, that you unfold. The piano is different. The piano creates this challenge of intimacy because you have only one point of contact, which is the keyboard. And that's the point at which the musician makes contact with the piano. And the range of sound that the piano can generate, from the tiniest whisper, which can be heard in a concert hall, to this booming sound. And so all of these elements go into thinking about the design. How do you create... Well, I took it from another position. I decided that the piano, or I determined that the piano was never really designed, that it was an accumulation of ornamental details, usually from architecture, and they were made by cabinet makers throughout the centuries. So it never got to that point until the very early in the 20th century, almost in line with, but never quite absolutely at the same level as the beginning of the industrial design period, which we have seen all the way through the 20th century. So my goal was to create an instrument that folded into our times, that was dealing with the essential line and stripping away all of those centuries of ornamentation until, in effect, it did have this sense of being a very delicate, sensitive instrument that the musician could relate to and have a sense of embracing.
And how many pianos did Steinway make that you had design influence over?
Well, one edition was 300, and that was in 2000. Another edition was 50. I would say when you put the whole group together, it's close to about 500 pianos. And if you want to look at it in terms of market, it's somewhere in the range of close to about $100 million worth of pianos. So that places me in a very rarefied area. In addition to that, I've done one-of-a-kind pianos for individual clients. And in some cases, I don't even know who these people are because they come from different parts of the world. And I'm now launching my own piano company.
Oh, do you play?
I do play, but I look at the piano as a watchmaker. I consider it to be a combination of furniture, machinery, system, and style. In fact, I look at furniture that way as well. And there's a great designer in the early 20th century named Pierre Chirot, who also designed the Maison de Verre, who had that same sense of furniture which had movement attached to it. So I'm very conscious of the way one approaches an object. One would approach the piano, how the piano opens up, how it unfolds. I've re-engineered the pedals of the piano. I've re-engineered certain aspects of how sound comes out of the piano. In every area, I've looked to have an impact on what it looks like, how it sounds, what the musician hears, how he engages with it. And it's similar to a watch in that sense.
Well, on the opposite end of the spectrum, Dakota, are you going to have like a Michael Graves phase where we're going to be able to buy a martini glass at Target for $9?
No.
Okay.
That was a quick answer.
Because, I'll buy a dozen. I'll buy a dozen, Dakota. Come on.
I wish I could do that. But that's not my field.
Okay.
There are areas in institutional furniture, like the library chair, which you mentioned before, where there are tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 chairs. I like designing for the people, but or not for the people, for the landscape that we live in. But there's a very distinct difference. I'm not attracted to that area of the market because it's too much about compromise. And it's too much about a kind of forced commercialism that I think more like an artist. I think more in that sense of how one refines, directs a particular vision over the years. And I've never merged well in terms of the mass production market.
Well, if you ever go in that direction, we'd like to be first in line.
I'll be the first one to call you.
Please
You'll be
do.
the first one I call, excuse me, the other way around. Yeah.
Please do. Dakota, thank you so much for spending time with us. Your career is just fascinating, and the amazing range of work and the thoughtfulness and the care that you put into everything you've done is outstanding.
Well, thank you very much.
When there's not a pandemic, singer-songwriter Krisanthi Pappas averages 200 performances a year between Boston and New York. Her performances range from retro pop to jazz and cabaret to musical theater, and she's opened for Sheryl Crow, Hart, Steely Dan, Chicago, Chuck Mangione, and many others. During COVID, Krisanthi performed a weekly popular virtual piano bar concert on her YouTube station, Krisanthi 5. Her latest adult contemporary single, Hug a Million Times, reached number 9 on the World Indie Charts in 2021 and the Cashbox Top 100. Here's my conversation with Krisanthi Pappas. Krisanthi, I know this is a podcast, but I can't help but notice behind you is a vast array of musical instruments. What you got back there?
Oh, that's right. Well, you're in my music room right now. Let's see. Over here is my drum set and bongos right there.
Bongos,
and then
yeah.
behind that are on the wall are hanging a mandolin, a guitarlele, which is half guitar, half ukulele, and then an acoustic ukulele and an electric ukulele. And then behind me is my piano. You can't really see it because I'm blocking it, but a digital piano. I have a grand piano in the other room, but this is kind of my workstation where I rehearse with my band and, write out arrangements. And I think that's all about all that's visible right now. So,
like a lot of musicians, you really burrowed in during the pandemic.
Absolutely. I mean, we had no other choice. All my gigs were canceled within, I think, a couple of days. It was just crazy, getting those phone calls. We're canceling this, we're canceling that. And it was in March, 2 years ago. And I had 14 gigs that March, and all of them were canceled within a couple of days. And then, we all thought it was going to be 2 weeks, right? And then Then it became a month, and then it became 2 months, and then it became forever. Then everything was wiped out. So yes, that is absolutely true.
I remember a particular Thursday when everybody called to cancel the speaking engagements that I was going to do. And it was like being on the end of a, suicide hotline or something. It's like, I'm so sorry, but we just have to cancel.
I know. It was unbelievable. I guess in some ways it kind of gave me this freedom to know that things can be canceled, because up until then I had never, ever canceled a gig or canceled anything because I take my commitment seriously. But when the whole world shut down, it was like, okay, I guess things can go on without, entertainment.
Well, you did something about it. You started a series of popular virtual concerts, I guess.
That's right.
From this very room?
No, I filmed that in the other room where my grand piano is.
Okay.
So, yeah, that started. So March 20th was the first date we did that. So now things had been shut down for about a week at that point. And I thought, I just had the need to connect with my audience and just kind of do a free concert. So I hooked up my computer. I went on YouTube Live and figured out how to do it. This was before I had any kind of musical interface or anything. I was just singing into the room, using the little pinhole microphone on my computer and playing piano. And I had a link to my song list if people wanted to make requests. And I didn't know how long I was going to perform, but it ended up being 2 hours. Anyway, then people started sending me tips, and it was just insane. I couldn't believe it. It was so nice. And then people were like, can you please do this again? So I said, okay. So I did it the following Friday, thinking that would be it, just those 2 weeks. Well, then, of course, as we just said, the pandemic continued. Then I started looking into the technical, well, how can I make this better? So I got a musical interface so that now the sound goes directly into a much better soundboard. And then it goes directly from there into the computer. So the sound is much better. So anyway, 2 years later, it's an every Friday night show. It's still happening and people are still supporting it. And I'm making a living from it. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, thank you so much for doing it. I know it's been comforting for so many people.
And me too. It's really just been this wonderful cycle of people are happy I'm doing it. I'm happy people are watching. It's really wonderful. So, and I mean, all because of the pandemic. It's kind of hard to believe that a pandemic could bring upon something like that, but it did. Probably for you too, right?
Oh, sure. It kept us off the streets, that's for sure. One other song that has comforted a lot of people is your big hit, One Slow Dance a Day, which itself is a slow dance song, which is great. I would think there's like the International Slow Dance Association would adopt this as their anthem.
Is there such a thing?
I don't know.
I'll have to find out.
Did you write the song?
I did, yes. I wrote the music and lyrics. It's interesting. I don't know how much you know about jazz, but it was when I was studying a particular chord structure called the 1-6-2-5. And it's very popular in jazz. And I was just playing around with it. And I thought, I could probably write a song on a 1-6-2-5. So that's how I wrote it, just because I was trying to write a 32-bar ballad. Most jazz ballads are 32 bars. The form is called AABA, meaning the A sections are the same and the B section is different. So it was kind of really just a writing assignment to myself. So I thought, okay, let's come up with something. The musical part was the assignment. And then the lyrics, I thought, well, okay, now I have to write something from my heart about the lyrics. So One Slow Dance a Day is something that I practice, or actually now it's become kind of one slow dance a week.
Here's Krisanthi with One Slow Dance a Day.
One slow dance a day. I love when we take time to play. One slow dance makes our romance stay. Lunch at a cafe. Come get me and take me away. Let's talk about things that we don't always say. We rush in the door, fly across the floor just to grab the ringing phone. Our backyard needs mowing, and while the list keeps growing, we still need time alone. One love song to play. There's always too much to do anyway, but one slow dance is the best part of the day. We rush in the door and fly across the floor just to grab the ringing phone. Our backyard needs mowing, and while the list keeps growing, we still need time alone. One love song to play. There's always too much to do anyway, but one slow dance is the best part of the day. At the end of the day, at the end of our day.
Krisanthi, you started out very young doing front yard concerts. How old were you?
That is absolutely true. Probably third grade, so like 8 years old. You know, I like to perform in front of people, and I didn't really have an opportunity to do that yet. So I lived on a busy street with a lot of traffic. And
Where was this? What town?
in Brockton, Massachusetts.
Brockton, Mass. Okay.
Yep, it's a small city, but definitely a busy city. And so we lived on a very busy street, and we were 5 houses from the stoplight. And so there was always traffic backed up, waiting for the red light to turn green, and just traffic sitting. So I would just sing the same song because the audience would change every time the light turned green. That whole group would leave, and now I had a new group. And I would just, stand on the front lawn, and most people wouldn't even look at me. They were like, who is this child over here? It was pretty funny, but I did do that. And then after that, I sang in my backyard. My dad built me a little cement stage, and that I wrote a song called My Backyard, and it talks all about how I used to sing in my backyard.
Now, you whizzed past that. A cement stage? That's pretty permanent.
Yeah, I know. In fact, I was just in Brockton recently, and I thought, I bet that cement stage is still there. You can't move it. Well, actually, it was part of our driveway. My parents were having the driveway repaved. And so there were these big cement blocks that were part of the original driveway that they were ripping up. And my dad said to the movers, before you just throw those out, can I take one of those blocks and make a stage for my daughter? So they brought them out into the backyard and put them on 2 stones. So there's 2 stones underneath it, and then the big cement block. It's probably about 4 feet wide, I guess.
Yeah.
And he also put some poles into the ground to pretend like microphones. Yeah, it was just me and the trees and the birds, and I had a great time.
This next song was written by Richard Carpenter, lyrics by Frank Puller, and was originally recorded in 1970 by the Carpenters. If there hadn't been the word Christmas in it, it probably would have gone on to be one of the great romantic songs of the 1970s. But instead, it fills in with the mix of songs we hear every Christmas time. I like it a lot because when you play it off Christmas, like in the summer or the fall, you really hear how great a song it is. Here's Krisanthi with Merry Christmas, Darling.
Greeting cards have all been sent. The Christmas rush is through, but I still have one wish to make, a special one for you. Merry Christmas, darling. We're apart, that's true, but I can dream, and in my dream I'm Christmasing with you. Holidays are joyful, there's always something new, but every day holiday. When I'm near to you, the lights on my tray, I wish you could see, I wish it every day. The logs on the fire fill me with desire to see you and to say that I wish you Merry Christmas, Happy New Year too. I've just one wish on this Christmas Eve, I wish I were with you. On my tray, I wish you could see, I wish it every day. The logs on the fire fill me with desire to see you and to say that I wish you Happy New Year too. I've just one wish on this Christmas Eve, I wish I were with you. I wish I were with you.
Tell me about the Sister Friend for Life concert.
So that was a concert that we had done for the Faulkner Breast Center, and a friend of mine, Sharon, who's also a singer, we just call each other Sister Friend because we're both singers, and I don't know, that's just a nickname that we came up with. And then when we were asked to do this benefit concert for the Breast Cancer Center, it seemed to make sense to use that title since it was for women. We did 2 concerts, to benefit the Breast Cancer Center at the Faulkner Hospital.
And that was a success.
It was a huge success. Yes, we made a lot. I can't remember what we made for that, but I do like to get involved in fundraisers from time to time on causes that I believe in. I recently did one for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. One of my piano students has cystic fibrosis. She's a young girl, and her sister is an amazing piano player. So her sister and I did this concert in honor of the younger sister. And that was another huge success. And, just makes you feel good to help out.
Krisanthi, where can people find your website?
It's just my name.com. So it's the spelling that's tricky. So it's with a K, Krisanthi, Krisanthi.com.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. And by
Modernist realtor Angela Roll. Okay, Tom, take us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 15,000 significant modernist houses, and access 4 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Order in the court! Rogue archivist Carrie Cesarino is the Judge Judy of modernism, researching guests while adjudicating architecture disputes via email. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another magically designed edition of U.S. Modernist Radio, full of delicious and aromatic charrettes, fresh out of the oven.
And if you eat too many, you'll need a fenestration.